Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi, all, and welcome to the next chapter with Charlie. Today, I visit with my dear friend and regular guest, Wendy Hooper Ross. Wendy is an expert in residential real estate. She devotes much of her time to understanding the current state and future states of the real estate market in the United States. Her insights are brilliant. Today's conversation, however, is not about real estate. It's a talk about Wendy's heart and about her finding contentment in unexpected circumstances. Let's see what Wendy has to say. Wendy Hooper Ross, welcome to the next show with Charlie.
Thank you for having me.
So good to have you.
It's a joy to be back, Charlie. I love chatting with you.
I know. This is and with this platform, it is just another form of chatting. It's just, we chatted, but we chat maybe not regularly, but moderately frequently. Mm-hmm. We'll chat a couple times a month, and our chats are brilliant. You are.
We really
so
should
insightful.
Record them all.
What's that?
We should record them all.
They're worthy. They're worthy. So let's jump right into it. I'm losing track of my notes. Okay, the last time we spoke, which was just a couple of days ago, you described a change in your life that seemed at first like it could be very difficult, but it turned out quite the opposite. Can you tell us about your move and the changes that you experienced?
Yeah. And it's so funny because I delude myself and I think I know myself so well. And then something like this happens and I realize I don't know myself at all. So I had a charming little house that I loved that, I bought with my then boyfriend and later husband, Mick. And Mick passed away in the house within 2 months of our moving in. So it was kind of a special place and a piece of him. And then someone made me an offer out of the blue and said, I want to buy your house. And it just felt right. I thought, this is something I need to do. I've got a ton of equity that I'm still going to have horrible capital gains taxes because I exceeded, my exclusion and. So sold the house kind of on a whim and then thought about trying to find a rental home quickly because I agreed to a short escrow. That was a challenge because of my big dog, Harley. Ended up renting a large 4-bedroom home in Anaheim Hills, which is quite a distance from, in my opinion, everything.
That's another 10 miles from where you're at, right?
Yeah, and it's so high up in the hills, it's difficult to get anywhere with any degree of expedition, and I'm a fairly impatient person. So I thought, this is going to be a temporary thing. It's good for the dog. It's really well priced. And moved in, signed the lease. Right before I moved in, my dog died. So I thought, I bought this house in particular because it was suitable for the dog. But then I realized, had I stayed in that house that I loved so much, it would have felt a bit haunted because, my two greatest loves died there. So it was this weird kind of mixed blessing that I'm now in this new environment. It gave me a really nice cash event to help me fund a new company that I'm starting. And it really is just, like I said, it's tabula rasa, just clean slate, start over. And it's really feeling great.
But I look at it. If I may interject, I don't want to tell your story, but you loved that house. I know you loved that house, and I was surprised that you were only there 7 or 8 years. I thought you had been there 20 years. It felt like it was a lifelong. I mean, that's the way it felt. It felt like a long time ownership, and. There had to be, at first, was there a sense of loss with that house that you were
absolutely
giving up something?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was my only real estate left that I owned. So it felt like I'm a real estate broker and suddenly I don't own real estate. So that was weird and that was odd. But it really is just another chapter. I needed to pursue these other things that are really important to me. And in hindsight, like I said, it would have been a very depressing place for me to be because it would have felt like so much loss. And when you're surrounded by the visual reminders, it's difficult to emotionally get out of that state. So yeah, it's an epiphany that I wasn't expecting. Who knew?
Yeah, well. So you know, this was like a what you expected would be just a backup, kind of a replacement, a short term.
Mm.
You told me you found happiness and a new kind of happiness that you didn't have before. That's amazing, and it's only been a couple of months, right?
Not
right?
even. I took possession on May 1st, moved in about mid-May. So I've been here for like 5 weeks. What's interesting is things were weighing on me that I was unaware of. I was unaware of, because the real estate market is challenging now, and I knew that my income was less than I wanted it to be, just, because the market is what the market is. But being able to have so much cash in the bank and not have to worry about, financial issues was a huge weight off my shoulders. And just that relief and that lightness that it has given me. And then also enabling me to pursue this new venture that's really near to my heart has been so much more joyful than I could have expected. It's really, despite having lost, my dog of 12 years, that was rough. But I know he's with his daddy, so we're good.
Yeah, that losing a pet, I'm not a pet person, but I do sympathize with people that lose because they are, I see dogs in that they are, the loyalty, the camaraderie, the love, the compassion, the affection, that's huge, and to lose those is huge. You're losing an enormous asset to you personally.
Yeah, he brought me great joy. He really did. And he brought Mick great joy. I mean, I think I shared with you that when Mick was in his final days and he was no longer present, he couldn't communicate. But that dog would jump up on the bed and somehow Mick's hand would find his paw and he would hold on to the dog, even in this unconscious state. Mick knew the dog was there and the dog was such a comfort for him. He was this amazing life form. That dog was everything.
Amazing. And then, I know for me, a home, when it becomes not a house, but it becomes a home, it's a sanctuary.
No one knows that better than me. Yeah. Yes.
How so? What do you mean no one knows that better than you?
My career is built on helping people find their sanctuary, and that's a big part of my client intake. When I meet someone and they say they want to buy a house and I know they're going to live in it, it's a different thing than when they're buying a rental property or an investment property. And we really need to get into the weeds about that. Like, what's important in your home? But this is the place where you go at the end of a rough day and you lick your wounds, or you comfort yourself, or you give yourself rest and rejuvenation. It's an important personal space. And how that feels is unique for all of us. And the things that help you feel the way you want to feel are unique to every client. So we tend to get into a lot of things like, sunlight, landscape, plant life, room size, all kinds of different things that are important to different people. Like I don't like baths. I don't take baths. Immersing myself in hot water doesn't feel good because of my heart condition. But I have clients that would not buy a house that did not have a giant bathtub. So I get that. It's like we just have to figure out what your sanctuary requires so you can go there and feel the greatest peace.
And then, with your creative aspect, I had never been in the house. You invited me a couple times, but we were at lunch and it wasn't far from lunch. And I just didn't have time to come. I wanted to see it. But my guess is it was personalized. You walked into it and it was a Wendy Hooper Ross home.
1,000%. Everyone said that. Yes.
Did they?
Yeah.
Did they?
I'll send you some pictures. Yeah.
Well, now see, those are big losses. And those are things that I don't know that, when we change residences, I don't know, we always take that for as an understanding that how important things are.
Yeah. I think a big part of my life and my happiness in my environment is art. So I have a lot of, I think, interesting art. I have one painting that is so big, we had to rent a special truck to move it. It's just giant. And then
really?
Yeah. I went to a gallery opening 14, 15 years ago. And this piece was on this, it was a warehouse style building in Los Angeles. There was this giant brick wall and this piece was hanging up there. And I saw that and just made a beeline, and the artist was there. And I said, I'm buying this. And other people. Yeah,
and those were the days when real estate was booming and you could buy any art you wanted to buy because it just was.
I'm fortunate it was an up and coming artist. So it wasn't more than, 4 figures. Because if it was a well-known artist, it would have been. And it has just been every day, Charlie, I look at that art and I am delighted that I bought it every day. But it's a really, it's not a piece I can show you because it will disturb some people. I'll send you a picture.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, now you've got my interest. Anything just, me, anything disturbing, I'm going to be.
The primary character in the piece is a woman who may or may not be clothed. She's sort of in silhouette. She's on her hands and her knees. The paint is dripping down the painting, and there's these horizontal lines out of a sheer white paint that makes it look as though you're peeking at her through mini blinds. And it's just this voyeuristic quality, and you don't really know what's going on with her. And I love it because it makes everyone think.
Oh, God, with that, and where I will go, obviously, where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the psychological part and see what is that saying. What does that say about Wendy? And what is...
Yeah, and we really should get into it sometime with that painting because having grown up around artists, and my father's an artist. And my mother dabbled, but my dad's, a serious artist. But the way it was painted too, in my experience, women tend to paint in a more controlled fashion. The expression of not coloring outside the lines. Women tend to do that. And there's more of a caution usually when a woman paints. Like think Georgia O'Keeffe, very, very confined. This painting has splashes of color and these weird shadows of the woman's shape, sort of echoing her shape in a rough, aggressive manner. And then, of course, the paint is so heavy that it's just bleeding down the canvas. Very masculine. And the colors, whites, reds, blacks, charcoals, very aggressive, very masculine. And she was this tiny little, maybe 5'3", red-haired woman, literally with horn-rimmed glasses. And I was like, what? You painted that? What happened?
Was her other art similar?
Not at all. It was a complete departure. All of her other pieces were smaller, very soft, pastel-y colors, also a little bit blurry without rough edges, but nothing like this. And she said, I don't know, that I just reached a turning point. And I'm like, yeah, you did. It's like she let herself go. I love it.
And Wendy, that's a great metaphor for what you're doing right now. Is that not a metaphor for you letting yourself go?
Yeah.
And letting yourself be an artist, not necessarily what the content of the art is, but the art process. That process is what you are doing now, and that you are experiencing something quite different from the Wendy Hooper Ross that we all think we know. That a lot of people think we know. I think I know pieces of you that a lot of people don't know, but that's because I have such an intuitive nature. I grasp things.
And you ask questions, but you're completely correct. And as always, Charlie, when I speak to you, I learn about myself every single time. And yes, what I have done in the last, 45, 60 days, I have shed everything that anchored me in a good way. Because we all need to feel grounded and anchored, I think, to some degree or another. And I'm a control freak. So I needed to feel grounded and anchored. And I lost my husband. I lost my dog. I let go of the house. And I would have expected to feel completely adrift. But instead,
yes.
Yeah, I feel freed. I feel unfettered. I feel free. I feel light. I'm so excited now that I don't have all this external noise and or responsibilities to people or things. And I can really just throw myself into something that's a passion play. And I've never been able to do that. I grew up a working teenager. I have supported myself since I was very, very young. I've had to work. I've had to be responsible. I've had to do this, that, and the other. And now for the next year or two, I can do whatever I want. It's kind of fun.
I wrote this. I was thinking, I've titled this show "The Season of Now." I'm a big believer in seasons. And I wrote this. Let me read what I wrote, and then we'll discuss it. I wrote, Wendy's experiencing the season of life, the season of now. Life is about experiences, and the impacts of experiences are very often likely to be surprising. Change is rarely ever about change, is often about a new season, all to be embraced and experienced. It is a matter of acceptance. Whatever the new reality is. It's a matter of accepting it and then thriving in it. And that is a choice. And that's for somebody who is hardwired, which really surprises me that you are hardwired to be so anal retentive, because you are so curious, so outgoing, so gregarious, so open, so receiving, that you don't exude any anal retentivity. You don't exude that. But this is giving you a chance. What do you think about this new season? This is a season for you. This isn't just a move and a change of loss. And what do I do with the loss? It's a change of almost not as much as what do I do to deal with this? It's what do I get to do to thrive in this?
Yes. I find myself thinking that I get to do this, not I have to do that. I mean, there are a few things we all have to do, right? I still have to buy groceries, I still have to, keep myself, presentable for the world and those things. But I get to do so much. It's almost, for me, overwhelming, because I can wake up and say, what do I want to do today? And sure, I love my clients. I'm not stopping real estate, but I'm not working 12 hours a day in real estate anymore. So I have so much time to pursue whatever I want, to the degree that I'm like, what do I want?
Well, the program that you've invented, that you are starting, is a real estate program, but it's a service program. It's a user-oriented program that I think it's kind of technical. It may be difficult to get into on the show, but it is going to serve so many, I mean, tens of thousands of people that are buying real estate that don't understand the documentation and really don't know what they're signing, because I never read all that shit. I just sign it, and then who knows what they could come after me and get, because I don't understand what I just signed.
Right. Well, and don't forget too that big class action lawsuit that changed our industry, now 2 years ago is when the lawsuit happened. It was brought by sellers, not buyers. It was brought by thousands of sellers who said, we didn't understand what we were signing. So, my software technology is going to create a private protected environment where anyone involved in a transaction, it's going to start with real estate, but the company will then roll out other industry applications. But for the real estate part of it, buyers and sellers alike, even investors, I think everyone is going to have their eyes opened and be shocked at how much they didn't understand before. And that's fun.
That, I can see the exuberance in you. I can feel the energy that's coming out, and perhaps, we talk in the mystical tradition about there comes a point, in order to reach the next phase of life, you have to die to the first phase. You have to die to it. It has to be gone. It has to disappear. You have died. Now, finally, Mick and I want to say Buster, but I don't know. What did you say? Harley. I met a dog at the Abbey named Buster. That's what came to me. So Mick and Harley and the home, this move forced you to finally, where you have to let go of all of that. And you have nothing to lean on except the reality of your goodness and your opportunity.
I appreciate that. And yes, I'm so delighted that you understand what it is that I'm doing with this new venture, because consumer awareness is so important, and it pains me to know, not believe, to know how many people are making these enormous decisions and don't understand exactly what's going on, not to the degree I feel that they should. And it's going to be wonderful to harness technology to help people just feel more empowered. I doubt it'll change outcomes at all. They're still going to buy one house or sell their house or whatever. I don't think it's going to change their decision making. I think it's just going to enrich their experience.
Will they have an opportunity to reject certain parts of the contract?
Yes and no. That's getting into some proprietary weeds I can't get into.
Okay.
But it is designed for the consumer to review everything and acknowledge that they understand and they agree with it. So what happens there between them and their professional broker agent is kind of up to them. But
yeah, and almost sometimes maybe not agree, but I'm willing to accept it.
Well, yeah, and there are some things that
it's tolerable. It's
right.
I'm not going to lose my house. I'm not going to have to worry about going into foreclosure about certain things that I wasn't prepared for.
It's funny you mentioned that, because years ago, I want to say it was maybe 2010. Yeah, because it was after the great meltdown of the market. Things were stabilizing a bit. We almost had an escrow fall apart over window screens. There were some tattered window screens, and the buyer really wanted the seller to replace them. The seller was like, that's ridiculous. It's a used house. They're used screens. I'm not going to replace them. And the buyer almost canceled the sale. We're like, you realize we're talking about like $300 worth of screens? You're really going to lose this house that I believe you love over this. But people pick strange hills to die on.
And that's a whole different story, because that's all ego.
1,000%. I want my way.
Yeah, I want my way.
Mm.
But what else is happening? So you feel like you have financial freedom. Tell me about the feelings of financial freedom. So many people, that's why they want to win people want to win the lottery because they want a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But really, I think at the bottom line, my son and I were talking about purpose of life and a number of different things. And his opinion, he's almost 33. He's a month from 33, month and a half from 33. And he's very wise for his age. And he says, I think that the main desire of most people is peace. Yeah. I think if we have peace, and I was explaining, I just came from the Abbey, and we do these things. I go to a Benedictine monastery, and so we follow the rule of Saint Benedict, and that means we 5 times a day spend 30 minutes praying the Psalms, and the monks will go through all 150 Psalms in a week. And the number of times, and the Psalms are all Old Testament, there's nothing from the New Testament, but the mentions of peace and the peace of God were just abundant. And that, you would be surprised. And peace is not between countries in warfare. It is this comfort that the peace is, like Julian of Norwich, in the end, all will be okay. And Richard Rohr says, if it's not okay, then it's not the end. So that's
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned that your son understands that. And I'm getting so old that he seems so young to me. And what a wonderful thing that he gets it so early in life. Because peace does come from within, not from without. And for me to be comfortable, like I said, for the next couple of years, it's because I don't need a lot of stuff. This chest back here I've had for 20 years. The table that I'm sitting at right here, it's same. I'm not a person that goes and consumes a lot. So my peace is more, like you said, quiet. It's more internal.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I add to my homes that I've consistently added is I get discontented with the shape of a sofa.
Really?
And I want it, it's not firm enough, they get soft, they get this. Maybe we're not buying expensive enough furniture. I don't know, but I don't want things changed. My art, you could have put, you've not been in my home either. There's not a space on the wall for art. It's not cluttered. I don't feel, but because we've appropriately used the space for art, but every wall space is art. Every wall space is some form of art. That is not going to change.
Yeah.
And I too have a painting that we just added, perhaps a year to year and a half ago. And it's a large painting like yours. It doesn't take a special truck to deliver, but it's probably 5 feet by 3 or 4 feet, and it's a painting of a woman, and it's her face, and it's a side, it's a side view, and the colors that are used on it, it's not quite abstract. Yeah, it's not radically abstract, but it's abstract realism. that whatever you call that form of art.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so attracted when I go to, that's my reading room. And I just will ponder that painting. And I have another piece of art that other people love, that they admire, because it truly is contemporary art, just jumbled, all stuff around. But it's very contemplative and very, very inviting. But I never even look at that painting. Other people look at it and they love that painting. I don't even look at it. It's the woman. I have a relationship with this woman.
That's art. I love that about art. And different pieces move different people in different ways. And that's, I think, the beauty of it. I love my face. I love my space. I love this new space. I love the view. I'm so happy. And what's funny, because my friends are all saying, "You're glowing. Are you in love? Are you dating someone?" I'm like, yeah. Well, I'm in love. Yes. I'm not dating someone.
I'm not dating someone, but I'm dating. I have an affair going on. I have there is a love affair going on that is. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say it's not even sexual. It's certainly sensual. Isn't it? Yeah. Isn't it? Because it hits parts of you. In these new seasons. The season. I think we are as struck sensually as we are anything else, and it is that indefinable that you can name it. You can name, I have financial freedom. I don't have to worry. I'm debt free. I don't have to worry about things. The backload, the Robert De Niro backload. Remember the movie called, I think it was The Mission, with De Niro and Jeremy Irons, where he's climbing up the mountain and he has his backpack full of his army gear and all that. And it's kind of a cliff and he's having to hang it by a rope, and it doesn't look like he's going to make it. And Jeremy Irons just takes some kind of knife or clippers and clips off the backpack and throws it off him, and he make it up. And he just said, "You needed to let go of this weight. You don't need it." And that was, and that was your past life. I mean, that was your recent past life, the last 8 years.
Charlie, that was my whole past life. We could go on, we could talk about, my life for 6 months of episodes, but, because I grew up in, I love my family, but it was a very troubled place. And I left home at 14, so I was in school and working and kind of hiding right out in the wide open. But I took this burden on myself, and I carried that heavy backpack longer than I should have, because I didn't know another way. And that took years, Then there was, the car accident, and had my face rebuilt. And then there was, getting my pacemaker because I was in cardiac arrest all the time. It just feels like there was always a different weight on my back. So this chapter that I'm in is novel.
This is almost like a phoenix chapter. Like a phoenix rising from, I've talked about dying to yourself. You've had to burn it down.
Yes.
And from the ashes, your phoenix is rising. Not the new Wendy, because I don't sense a different Wendy. I sense a more content Wendy. I think you are the same, because, there is this, you don't have to take on a persona of kindness and generosity and acceptance of people. You don't have, that's not a new personality you have to assume. Okay, I'm going to quit being the asshole and I'm going to start being the generous, caring person. you've always been the generous, caring person. Like, I want to hear your story of how we met, because I think you exuded that. That's why we met, because it was beaming from you in this club, and the club was busy at the time. We were in the lounge of a club, and there were likely 50, 60, 70 people in the club, and I happened to be at a table doing some computer work, and I had been doing that regularly, and all of a sudden this beautiful blonde woman comes to the fore, and everybody is acting like, here comes the queen of the hop. And so how did we tell the folks how we met?
That's funny. It was, I believe, the first day I had gone back to the club after losing my husband. No, it was the first day I came back to the club after his funeral, because his celebration of life was held at the club. So I was in this state of stupor, of course, after losing him. And the then general manager of the club reached out to me and said, we're hosting his celebration here. That's a statement. It's not a question. You tell me what you want in terms of, food and beverage and all of that, and we will take care of it.
I was completely unaware of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My husband was beloved. It's a pity that you didn't meet us both there before, but just obviously it wasn't in the cards. So anyway, after his celebration of life, I went home and wallowed in self-pity for a while, 4 months. And that day you were at the club was the first day I had come back and was feeling like a human being again. I was feeling like talking to people again. And I sat at the bar and was, I'm sure you saw, chatting with the bartender, who I was delighted to see again. Because these people, when you go to a private club, you see the employees and the other club members over and over again. It becomes this, fraternity or sorority of sorts.
True.
So as I was sitting there, because I had been MIA for so many months, employees and members started coming up and saying, "Oh my gosh, you're here," and hugs and kisses, and "How are you?" And I was the same. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I know. How are you? And how's your son? And how's your baby? And how's your husband? And how's your wife? And how are the kids?" And we were just joyfully reconnecting and catching up, because they all knew why I had been away, and they were very respectful of that. But I was really happy to be back and kind of plugged back into life again, because I had divorced myself from it. And after probably 20 or 25 people had come by to say hi and reconnect, you finally stood up and walked over and said, "Who are you?" Everyone knows you. I've never seen you before. How does everyone know you? Who are you? And of course, you introduced yourself, and we had a delightful conversation.
Yeah, and I think I assured you, I think it was obvious it wasn't a hit.
Mm-hmm.
It was not, it was pure curiosity and joy.
It was pure curiosity, and I sensed a little bit of wonderment,
That's a great adjective.
Was it accurate?
Very accurate. Very accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we hit it off.
Oh yeah, we did.
We probably, you had people wanting to see you, and I probably, because I had work to do, but I probably took 10 or 15 minutes of your time right then, because because you were so, you were so engaging, you were so generous with your love that you just shared it with a stranger who was interested.
You nailed it earlier when you said that you have this intuition. You also have this energy that is palpable when someone meets you for the first time. And I felt, to a degree, I felt you, and I felt your sincerity, and I felt your honesty, and I felt your peace. It was very peaceful to be in your company. It was joyful. It was really nice. It was what I needed. And here we are.
Oh my, that's I don't cry, but that's moving me to tears. But I don't I don't cry unless it's a sappy movie. I just saw the new Karate Kid 2 times. I wrote a review on it in Fandango, and I wrote it's totally predictable, totally hokey, and amazingly adorable, engaging, and worthy of seeing. I cried twice in that movie. The second time I saw it, I almost cried again.
Wow.
Movies do that. It's only movies. Movies bring the tears in me.
Well, I will try never to make you cry.
No, if you make me cry, it's a winner. It's a success.
Wow. Yeah, I have many acquaintances and a solid few friends. Because I do tend to have my guard up and I don't let people very far in. Like the people that I saw at the club that day, of course, I was delighted to see them. But most of them had certainly never been to my home. You know, it's not like they weren't all inner circle people. And when it comes to the employees too, I mean, when Shaheen had said, you know, we're hosting the event here, there's, you know, this is not a question. And then when I later followed up with him and said, you know, Mick was raised Australian, he really loved meat pies. And because he had lost his taste because of the throat cancer, this particular Sculpin beer was his favorite because he could actually taste it. And Shaheen said, okay, great, chef is on it. We got this. And by the way, every employee in the place wanted to work. I had to tell some of them no. So the day when I came back and was talking to the employees, I was just so grateful that everybody was so generous and wanted to come in on their day off and celebrate Mick. You know, it was impossible not to adore them for that.
You know what you remind me of when you say that? You remind me of the word, my Buddhist interpretation of the word karma. In the United States, we have a habit of defining karma very transactionally, as if it's a tit for tat. You know, you do a good deed, keep your eyes open because a good deed's going to be coming to you. You do a bad deed, look out, shit's going to come and hit the fan sometime. That's not the way karma works, because you can do a good deed, certainly, and nothing happens. I mean, you don't have a good deed in return. You can do a bad deed. I mean, if I got a negative response for every bad deed I did, you know, I'd be living with a boatload of negativity. But that's not, it was explained to me by a Buddhist monk that that's not what karma is. Karma is, I wish I could, I found the definition. It is the accumulation of patterns of thought and behavior that stay incorporated within our being. Therefore, we have we have an energy, we have an aura, and I believe how strongly I believe. I think you know how strongly I believe in kindness, and that you can have an aura of kindness. You have an aura of vitality, of energy, of love, of appreciation of people. And so it's not because you said something nice to a server, it's because you have this aura. You have this presence of it. That is what karma is. And that attracts vitality and embracing and accepting. It attracts those kinds of people, and it repels negative people because there's no opening. It's hard to be negative to an attractive person, not in the movie star way of attractive, but in the human way of I attract other people. I attract, and it's the same way with kindness. Kindness, I live in the world. If I can give a compliment, I will give a compliment. Mm-hmm. If I can do something nice, I will say something nice. I live in that world. Therefore, I don't receive a lot of negative feedback unless it's an individual criticism about an individual act. I get that. Mm-hmm. I get that. Or, and it's not even a criticism. It's like, I'm not sure, did you really mean it that way? It was a question about it. But that is what karma, and so what you're reminding me, like your actions at the club were a result of your karma. Does that make sense to you? Do you agree with that?
It does. It resonates in a lot of ways, but it confuses me as well, because I have always been aware that something about me attracts people. And there's a magnetism for whatever reason. But I have found that I also attract a lot of the negative people, and I have to invite them to get the heck out of my life, like go away. So maybe my karma is not as clean as we thought, and there's a little bit of darkness there, because I'm some of the buffoons come along too.
Well, are the negative karma people, are they male or female?
Predominantly male, but not exclusively.
Yeah, and my response, my comments on that is, one, from some people it could be jealousy, but from men, they misinterpret that because they're only thinking one thing. And so they misinterpret that to say, oh, this would be cool to hook up. And females are, I could see how that energy, who you are, scares people, scares women.
I think it does.
And so that's a whole different, now you're going to a whole different psychological, it's not your karma as much as that you've got good karma, but it's people's psychological protective mechanisms that they're voicing at that time or thinking about at that time.
Or other ways demonstrating. It just is what it is. I'm bored with me. How are you?
How am I? Wendy, I get asked that on occasion, but this is the first time I've been asked on a podcast, how am I? I was just with my spiritual director on Wednesday, and we had a 90-minute chat. Usually it's an hour, but we had 90 minutes, not because my life was so problematic that he felt he had to manage it. It's just because he was curious, and our spiritual direction is really spiritual conversation around whatever my issues happen to be. And he's very good at what he does. And I told him, Abbott, he's the Abbott of the community. So he runs the community. And I said, so you know what, Abbott, I have had times in my life where I've lived a very troubled life. The only trouble I've ever gotten into that wasn't self-inflicted pretty much was as a child, and that was rejection and abandonment, which I view, and I told the abbot, I view them as a blessing, not as a curse. Because that means the people I identify with and I understand are the oppressed, the disenfranchised, the people that have been rejected by society, the people that the current administration wants to deport. Immigration and deportation are two separate issues. I don't agree with open immigration, but once you're here, I told my friend Terry Hershey, once you're here, you're mine. And he says, do you mean you're mine or you mean you're my gardener? And, and I said, well, you may be my gardener, but I love you. I overpay you. I pay you more than I pay. I don't overpay you, but I pay you more than what you charge. Because I support your work. I support what you're doing and how you're taking care of your family. I learned that, but you know what? I got myself into a lot of trouble. I had my trouble in my alcoholic and addiction days. That happened. Early in life, and then later in life. They happened in my around my 50s, because I've got 28 years of sobriety. No, I've got 26 years of sobriety. It just took me 28 years to get there, because I had a couple of years that I had to go out and do it some more. So they're self-inflicted. I have self-inflicted serious issues that Pam and I went through serious issues. I was a dick and just was bad in our marriage. And she, by the grace of God, put up with it. She doesn't know how she did, but she put up with it.
Wow.
And so my bottom line, what I was telling the Abbott, I've lived a charmed life. I look at my life, and my life has been good. I've had good things happen to me. I've been successful. I've done things in inordinate ways. I've taken circuitous routes to get to success. And I've just basically, and he said, Charlie, are you planning on dying? Because it sounds to me like, you're giving your obituary. And I said, no, you ask how I am. And that's what I say. I'm just, I'm a very content guy. I get to, even in retirement, I get to serve the people I want to serve. I serve charities that I want to serve. I have a blog. I have a podcast. I get to write. I get to do fun things. And life for me is very, very cool. And having friends like you just make it, that's what add to it, and make it so much more.
1,000%. And I love about you that you see people that are often unseen. You see them and you respect them. And that is something that I think is, like you said, more common with people who have had adversity and had troubles and understand what it is to not feel like you belong somewhere. And that's a rare gift. It really is.
I don't know, rare, maybe not rare. I don't know. Maybe, but it's unimportant. It is just a gift. And I will accept that gift. And I, like you, as you were going through your season, and let's wrap up with this. I think, I've got, you could just tell by the video that I've got a few years on you. You consider yourself old. I consider you a puppy.
I'm just getting there. I'm just getting seasoned.
But there is something about old age, older age as you get, and then, you move from old age. I read a book, Travels with Epicurus, where the author Daniel somebody wrote, I want to figure out how to have meaning in life in old age before I hit old age, and it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm finding I'm not at old age, but I'm on the cusp. My wife doesn't like me saying how old I am, but I'm 75. I'm on the cusp of old age. I think once you hit 80, you're kind of moving into the old age, but I've got 5 years to go. I'm healthy. I just did my doctor's appointment. He says, you're stupid healthy. What kind of exercise are you doing? I'm not. And so, he challenged me with that. But I think older age and moving into what what Richard Rohr, my hero from the Center of Action and Contemplation, and the prolific author, talks about the second half of life. And the second half of life is dying to the need to identify, dying to the need of trying to articulate your ego, trying to define your ego, which is very important. There's nothing wrong with that. Ego gets put down too much, but ego is important. You've got to have a good ego. If you don't have a good ego, you walked into that room and excited all those people because you understood yourself. You were comfortable with yourself. You were good with yourself. Well, as we get older, you die to that. You don't lose it, but that's no longer important. That's no longer of value. There's another sense of contentment that happens as you get older. I have found my 70s, the decade of 70s, or no, not the decade of 70s, my age of 70s, is the finest decade I've ever experienced. Ever. I think I'm smarter. I think I'm wiser. I love my life. This is, and I've had some damn good decades before this.
I love that. It gives me so much to look forward to.
Oh, and you have so much to look forward to. Wendy Hooper Ross, you have been a star, but you are a star in the making. You will be a model for us all. We will all follow the exploits and adventures in contentment of Wendy Hooper Ross.
I hope so. Thank you.
Well, buddy, it's been great having you on the show. Now I hope listeners can understand why you're a regular.
Well, keep having me back, and I'll keep trying to be interesting.
Oh, you don't have to try to be. It's just be Wendy. So it's not trying to be anything. It's just trying to be Wendy. Okay, so with that, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.